Uttara Bharat Kumar, Senior Technical Advisor for Social and Behavior Change, John Hopkins Center for Communication Programs, and the Bloomberg School of Public Health, and Ravi Bhatnagar, Director External Affairs and Partnership, SOA, Reckitt. So Uttara, coming to you, it was interesting that he was mentioning diseases like AIDS and TB, and which are the communicable diseases. And you've worked a lot in the field of HIV, and you've done that in Africa and India. So going forward, we know something like HIV today, AIDS today, because you have retroviral drugs. People can actually live with HIV for much longer. Earlier, if you had HIV or you had AIDS, it was like a death sentence. So we've made that kind of progress. But the gap seems to be in people getting to these drugs. So some countries have access, others don't. So what do you see as these kind of challenges in the future, since you work in this field of public health?
Sure. Thank you for that question, Swati, and thank you for having me on this panel. It's a delight to be here in this company to talk about behavior, which is my a passion. If we think about the future and where we'd like to be, we want a society that has diseases like HIV, communicable diseases like TB, and so on under control. And when we think about that, there's the medical side of it, and then there's the behavioral side of it. So you can't achieve one without the other. So we can keep bringing treatment to people and people to treatment, but until you work on prevention or early treatment seeking, there's going to be a serious challenge. We're always going to be out of resources. Our health centers are going to be overwhelmed, and something like COVID will come along and overwhelm the system even more. In countries like Africa, they struggle already to provide basic health services, and then when you add COVID to the mix on top of the HIV, it overburdens the system that can almost shut down. More than half of the diseases that people come to hospitals and clinics for these days are preventable by behavior. So we have clinical, we have policy, and then we have behavior, individual, family, and community behavior. And how can we address that? So my question is, when we think about best medical care, we want the best doctors. When we want the best kinds of policy, we get the best policymakers. So when we want to change behavior, why don't we get the best behavioral scientists and the people who know how to do that? And design strategically, fund those programs, and make sure we invest in prevention. Because there's prevention, there's also early treatment seeking, and there's adherence. All of these behavioral aspects will reduce the burden on a very overburdened health system. So things like HIV, which you're talking about, we keep on putting more people on treatment, but how about preventing people from getting HIV? We're forgetting the prevention side even as we talk about the treatment side.
It's so important talking about behavior, and I think what Amitabh's questions just now were just spot on, really good, because I'll give you an example. Tech and behavior. We travel around villages all in every state, and one thing we found that the tech is working much better. That, for example, many villages, widows are given 1,000 rupees a month, which is like a godsend for them. But all of them, when we talk to them, the behavior, when they go to the bank to collect the 1,000, the teller wants 500. That's the behavior of the teller. So many told us, so we took one or two to the bank. And we asked the teller, why did you take 500 from this old lady? It's 1,000, she's so poor. What kind of behavior is that? He said, speak to my boss. He wasn't in the bank. We tried to, the line cut gaya. But that's what's happening. The tech is working, but then the behavior of how do you make sure that they get that? And that's what you said. Yeah. It's good to talk to the recipient. Did you get that?
There's no respect, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
The example that Dr. Roy has just given is so pertinent. Just because you come from, pardon my language, a lower strain of society,
right,
you're looked down upon. You can stand in the queue, you go to the teller and say, baad mein aana. Or udhar jaake khade ho. That poor lady has probably traveled miles to come to this, to collect her due. It's her due.
Yeah.
She's not getting her due. I mean, this is ridiculous.
You're making a very important point, which is about social norms.
But this is not just in this sphere of life. It's happening everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
So individual behavior is shaped by social norms because, it's what is acceptable. How long do we say that's okay? And as long as we say that's okay or that's not okay, an individual will continue to behave that way. Take domestic violence, for example. People think that it's okay to beat your wife because that's the social norm. If you're a man, that's how you show control. That's how you show love. And the women themselves sometimes when interviewed will say that if he beats me, that means that he loves me, that he cares. So this is a social norm that's been created. But if you actually interview individuals, they'll tell you that not many men beat their wives. So it's what is considered a social norm, what is expected, what people think happens versus what actually happens. Right?
That determines behavior.
We need to shape that and change that to change individual behavior.